Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Don Lemon Show. Look at that man on your screen right there, that handsome face. Known as the Mooch. He's the former White House communications director. I think he has a record for the longest serving as the longest White House communications director. That is sarcasm. He's the founder of Skybridge Capital, the host of the Rest is Politics podcast, the author of a brand new book out called From Wall Street to the White House and Back. From Wall Street to the White House and back. Anthony Scaramucci, my friend. Anthony, how are you doing?
So I'm doing great. I got to tell you a quick story because you're mentioning the fact that I was fired after 11 days, which of course I was. I'm in the airport and I'm getting on a plane. I think it was a plane to get down to Washington. This guy taps me and he says, "Do you know who I am?" I said, "No, sir. I'm sorry. I don't know you." He goes, "That's right. I am so-and-so. I spent 8 years at the White House as Bill Clinton's communications director, and nobody knows who I am." And you know, when I'm introduced places, they say, "Oh, you were communications director at the White House, like the Mooch?" Goes, "You little son of a bitch. You spent 11 days there. I spent 8 years there. Nobody knows who I am."
Nobody knows him.
Yeah, but he wasn't saying it that funnily the way you're smiling. He was a little upset about it, to be honest, Don.
That means you're a star, Anthony.
That doesn't mean I'm a star. Just I failed miserably, and failed spectacularly, and people remember.
And it was very public, and that's what happened, right?
Right.
But, well, you know, hey, sorry about that. Look, I didn't. I would say I had the shorter tenure than you, but I actually wasn't fired. I just had a deal that got canceled before the show even started. So, hey, I know how you feel.
Yeah, no. Somebody said to me, "How many mooches did Don Levin last with Elon Musk?" I said, "Hey, man, I'm not calculating that. Number one, I don't think any. And number two, it has to actually have a start date." As an example, you could use a Scaramucci in a sentence. Liz Truss lasted 4.1 Scaramucci's, slightly longer than a head of cabbage. Okay, Speaker McCarthy, 24.5 Scaramucci's. He gets pissed at that because he knows I think he's the coward of Washington, the coward of the Republican Party, you know.
How long was his tenure, Kevin McCarthy, as Speaker?
As Speaker, he was about 8.5 months, 24.5 Scaramucci's.
Okay. Yeah, that was pretty short, though, for that. And then Liz Truss, you're talking about she was Prime Minister. 45
days.
45 days.
Yeah, so I know these people have hard times now because we eject quickly, we cancel people quickly, we form our opinions, and then we get solidified around the righteousness of our opinions. And so at some point, I do think that fever breaks because it's just not helpful to anybody.
Well, Anthony, I'm sure people may be surprised or maybe not that we're friends, but I got to tell you, during the whole Trump thing, we never disliked each other. It was just that, you were in government and you were rooting for a guy I thought was a bad guy. It happens. But you're always a nice person. And I don't know if people realize that you're actually a very kind person. You're a peacemaker.
Yeah, it's very, it's sweet of you to say. I feel the same way about you, but here's the thing. I made a mistake. I can explain the mistake that I made, but I've also owned the mistake. I don't pretend that I didn't make a mistake, and I'm not running into a direction of further nonsense, and I don't understand why, because you're a journalist and you know people in Washington and you know Republicans in Washington that cannot stand Donald Trump, yet they get to a microphone and say, okay, what are Trump's talking points? Where's the red tie and the white shirt? Let me get up to New York and let me read these talking points because I've got to pass a Donald Trump loyalty test. And I don't understand that they have allowed. Listen, I'm a center right guy. I'm agnostic on people's social issues. I helped Andrew Cuomo with the gay marriage issue in New York. We got 4 senators that were Republicans to switch over. And to vote for the legalization of gay marriage in New York. I'm obviously a pro-choice, even though I'm a Roman Catholic, but that's my choice. If I choose to not have an abortion, that's my choice. I wouldn't impose my personal religious choices on anybody else. But I've been a center-right person my whole life, as it related to business, regulation. Nobody is fiscally responsible anymore, Don. We spent $8 trillion of deficit spending under Donald Trump. We're going to match that or eclipse that with Joe Biden. But I mean, we need to get back to some level of sanity. But I got something wrong with Trump, and so I own it. And there's other people that can't own it. and they're destroying that center-right coalition. And I'm telling you, whatever your politics are, whatever your political views are, you don't want one party. You do not want one-party rule.
Well,
you need the two parties to rub against each other and reach a consensus.
Okay. All right. Look, and before we get too far in the weeds, I appreciate you saying that, and I agree with you. I think that considering what you do for a living, it's not surprised that you're center right, and fiscally, I agree with you on, somewhat on that. But let me just say, when you talked about tenures, right? Well, actually, when you talked about people making mistakes and then not owning it and then going back and trying to pretend that otherwise. That I think that's a big problem with our society now, and that's actually a big problem with the guy who wants to be president again, right? He served one term, so he did about 85 Scaramucci's. I'm not sure.
Yeah, 86 Scaramucci's. Yeah,
86 Scaramucci's, and now he's got 34 criminal counts of falsifying business records. What was your gut reaction, Anthony Scaramucci, when you heard and saw the verdict coming down?
Well, look, I mean, here's what has me upset about everything. Okay, we could debate whether or not the case would have been brought on another citizen or not. We can have that debate, but the case was brought. Right. And then the question is, was the case brought fairly, and was there a fair adjudication of the facts, and were there 12 jury members of his peers that were not partisan? They were citizens of the United States that were examining the facts as presented by the prosecution and the defense. And so the answer to all of that, yes, it was. And so they rendered a guilty verdict. And so that guilty verdict should be upheld unless there's something on appeal that will disavow that verdict. And I don't see anything from a guy that did go to law school. I'm not a lawyer, but I do play one on television. When I look at it, I don't see anything that they could successfully appeal the case on. So you have a group of politicians now that are disavowing the justice system. They're saying it's a rigged thing. It was politically contrived. This is very, very damaging for the country. So at the same time that that's going on, Hunter Biden is being prosecuted, the president's son. Bob Menendez is being prosecuted, the Democratic liberal senator from New Jersey. And so you can't pick and choose. You have to look at the system and say, yes, is the system perfect? No. But is the system fair? Yes. And so I think it's a terrible mistake that these Republicans are out there that are supposedly for the rule of law. I was out last night with a guy that's been a trial attorney before the New York State courts and the federal courts. And he says, Anthony, people don't have to realize how hard it is to become a judge. Once you're a judge, what the process is that renders a fair decision. And to have a group of people that are supporting Donald Trump disavow a 250-year process that has made so much of our country, has made such a success of our country, I think is absolutely terrible. And it's a sign of the reason why you don't want Donald Trump, because he's shooting for something that's more arbitrary and more capricious as it relates to justice. Things have to be tilted towards him and not away from him. And so I don't like it. And I just want to make one last comment to the business people that listen to your show. The capitalist system in the country, which has led to so much aspirational success for the society, is predicated on our laws. You don't have the same predictability of legal rights and property rights in China or in Russia that you do here in the United States. That created the flow of capital into the United States that we've all benefited from. So if you want to wreck the justice system, the judicial system of the United States, you're going to really hurt these businesses. And so even though a lot of my buddies on Wall Street are pro-Donald Trump and are pro-business, they're missing this big meta, this big macro thing, that if he moves towards authoritarianism, he's really going to hurt the system of capitalism in the country. It'll turn into cronyism.
Since you made that big gesture, I just noticed your shirt. At first I thought it said Trump.
No. But it says Ghost. Okay, so this is in honor of my uncle. He ran a motorcycle shop in my hometown. He assaulted Omaha Beach on the 6th of June in 1944. He was part of the Army Corps of Engineers, one of the first group of Higgins boats to land on that beach. Of the boat that he was in, he was one of 4 survivors on that boat to actually get on the beach and then successfully off the beach. And he was wounded in France later, but being part of the Greatest Generation, he was in an Army field hospital wounded. When he healed up, he had the right to get discharged and leave, come back to the United States. He stayed with his division, and they fought the Battle of the Bulge, and then he was in Potsdam with Harry Truman. And so because of what's going on this week, the 80th anniversary of D-Day, in celebration of him, he owned a motorcycle shop in my hometown, and I'm wearing the shirt.
And it'll be 80 years ago to the day. We're taping this on the 5th. Today is the 5th. And it'll be 80 years ago tomorrow.
Yeah, so I'm wearing this in solidarity with my uncle Anthony, who is a decorated war hero. He got the Purple Heart. He got the Distinguished Silver Cross. He did all of these different things. And you know what I'll do at the end of this? I'll send you an article written about him. And he was just a good guy. And he said something that your viewers and listeners should really listen to. He died fittingly on Memorial Day, 2005, at the age of 81. But he said that I had the blessing of surviving those battles and returning to the United States to live an ordinary life, Don. Yeah. And I just want you to think about the treasure of just living an ordinary life in this country, which is the reason why guys like General Milley, John Kelly, myself, Mark Esper, the former Vice President of the United States, Mike Pence, are all in the never Trump camp at this point. We were once Trump, but we're now saying, I'm sorry, you can't allow this guy to return to the presidency. It would be very dangerous for the country.
With that, I'm glad you mentioned that, because with that said, was there some sort of satisfaction in this verdict for you? Were you like, thank God? Did you feel vindicated in some way?
Me personally, I don't feel vindicated, but if it's a chink in the armor that prevents him from returning to the presidency, then I'm very, very happy about it. And, it's the minor case of the 4 cases before President Trump. He's got the documents case, as you know, that's been delayed by the judge. I guess all of that judge's decisions are fair and impartial. There's no cronyism on the part of the judge. You see what I mean? So in other words, he got convicted in New York. That's terrible. The court case in Florida has been delayed. Well, that's fair and impartial. You can't have it both ways. And then you have the case, and I just want to remind your listeners and viewers of this, the chief witness on the January 6th insurrection case is Mark Meadows. And so this is not a Soros-sponsored African-American DA, all the MAGA talking points. This is a white Southerner, a white Christian that ran the Freedom Caucus in the House of Representatives, is the chief witness. He has the evidence that will prove the premeditation of Donald Trump when it came to the insurrection on the 6th of January. Now, that case has been delayed by the immunity issue and so forth. But if the Supreme Court comes out, as I predict that they will, that he does have levels of immunity professionally, but he does not have levels of immunity that supersede his professional immunity. He can't shoot his adversaries and hire a SWAT team to kill a opposition candidate. That trial is going to hurt him in a way that has him scared, because he's staring down the barrel of jail time, Don. He may not go to jail for New York, but he does go to jail for the J6 prosecution.
Mark Meadows also worked in the White House, right? So, again, this is someone who was in the White House who's saying this, who has knowledge of this. But also, he may not have to deal with this until after if he becomes president. And who knows? It may go away if he becomes president.
He'll do the very best he can to make it go away if he becomes president. But Don,
he can pardon himself.
Think about the fear that this guy's living with right now. You can see it on his face. You can see it on the Fox News interview. I don't know if you saw his hair. His hair was all like this, and it looked like a little bit like he was like one of the Little Rascals from the 1930s comic series. And he's upset. He's riled because he's like, wow, I did premeditate that insurrection. I did steal those documents. And I did ask for the Secretary of State of Georgia to steal and or find votes for me to win the state. So I've got 3 more cases I'm dealing with. If for some reason I don't win the presidency, and let's say all these court cases are delayed, oh man, I'm probably going to end up going to jail on one of these court cases because you'll be a private citizen without that political influence.
So then, here, speaking of that, when you're saying this is fair and impartial, because I've watched very closely to the people who are in Congress, the people who are in the Senate, the people who are in politics in Washington. I watched the political pundits, the Democrats, as they were talking about Hunter Biden. Now, the Republicans were saying this is unfair. This, Donald Trump is getting special treatment, but not in the good way. And then every Democrat said, if Hunter Biden, and I watched, if Hunter Biden did something wrong, then he should face the consequences. It's sad that he had an addiction, and he has an addiction. When you're an addict, you're always an addict because you're in recovery, it is believed. But to a person, everyone said, Hunter Biden is on trial. He should face the music, whatever that is. But yet the MAGA people on the other side are saying, this is unfair. He is a victim. What gives, Anthony? Why do we have this chasm in our political system?
Because you know what gives. They're under, this guy is a successful bully, and they're under the yoke of him. And so he is, if you remember one time on your show, I called him the Wicked Witch of the West Wing. Okay, yeah. So he has all of his minions living in fear. If they threw the water on him and he melted, they would do what the soldiers did to Dorothy. They turned to Dorothy and said, geez, I'm really sorry for the way we've treated you. They know privately, if they had a beer with you or Tim and they sat down with you guys and say, yeah, he's a really bad guy, but for political purposes and for my own preservation of personal power, I'm going to check off the boxes necessary to not get in his crosshairs. Okay, so Kevin McCarthy had him on the ropes. On the 7th of January, Kevin McCarthy had Pelosi, she had McConnell, and he had McConnell and Schumer. He could have brought the case against Donald Trump, the impeachment case, and then could have knocked him right through the ropes, convicted in the Senate on the 7th of January as an active president, but they let him go. Okay, and they came up with this false narrative that, oh, he's done now, he's not going to return to the president, but they didn't understand him. And so he's back. Mm-hmm. He's scaring the daylights out of them. They're all shaking like the Tin Man and the Lion in the movie because he's a bully, he's insufferable, and they're cowards. And whether you like the hard left or not, the hard left is less dangerous than the hard right. The hard left is at least like, okay, you know what? There's a democratic system. There's checks and balances in the system. I want to preserve that system. Now, they may want to go in a direction that the center-right people don't want to go in, but they want to maintain and preserve the system. You know, I'm going to get in trouble for saying this, but I'm going to say it, okay? These hard-right guys are like, wait a minute, the country's becoming browner. The colorful mosaic of the country is becoming more beautiful and more colorful. Yes. Does that mean that brown and black people are going to run the country? Yes, likely because of the demographics. Okay, I'd like to change the rules. I don't want there to be a democracy anymore because I don't want that to happen. Okay, that's the underlying message of those people that are buying catheters and walkers from Fox News commercial interruptions. And so it has to be called out, Don. It has to be exposed, because when it's exposed, then people have to look in the mirror and say, well, I don't really want to, I actually think like that, but I don't really want to be like that. And that's where the change can happen.
Well, I mean, they think like that, but I don't know if they're aware that that they're acting out of fear. I think that Fox News and others have somehow convinced them that they're being patriotic by feeling that way. And they don't understand that they're acting out of fear and out of racism, because basically, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, they're saying, oh my God, be afraid, the blacks are coming.
Listen, you know, I may see it differently than you because of the way I grew up and the party that I've lived in for the last 40 years. You know, this is a party that is working on the tyranny of the minority. This is a party that's looked at the system that we call the Republic of the United States and said, okay, I got to work on these 4 senators in South Carolina and North Carolina. That's even though those combined states don't have the population of the island of Manhattan. There's 4 senators there, which will balance out the 2 most populous states. Okay,
wait,
and then they
I don't
work
think you
on the
understood my question.
gerrymandering.
I don't think you understood my question. I was talking about the people who are sitting at home who are being convinced that, as you said, the people who are, your words, buying catheters, and they're afraid that of the browning of America. That's what my question is in. And the folks in politics, they're doing the gerrymandering. They're the ones that are rigging the system.
Yeah, okay, so let's talk about the folks at home, okay? And I give everybody respect, and I would say Abraham Lincoln had the best line about the American people. Don't say they're not smart. They have a very good nose. But what's going on right now is Trump is operating off of a fear basis with the American people. Right. Trump is offering out a disunified message. Mm-hmm. Reagan didn't offer out that message. Jack Kennedy didn't offer out that message. Franklin Roosevelt didn't offer out that message. Their messages were hopeful. But Trump's message is your country is changing. Right. He uses the words pouring over the border. That's code for black and brown people are pouring over the border, changing your country, and you should be fearful of these people. They're going to come and rape and hurt you. They're going to come and murder you or rob from you. And then he'll point out to
take your jobs and your money.
Take your jobs and your money. And by the way, he'll point out specific instances. And so the great propaganda of Donald Trump, there's always kernels of truth in what he's saying. And so someone will always point to, oh, well, that part is true. That woman was killed by a illegal immigrant. And by the way, that is an unspeakable tragedy, and I'm not trying to minimize it. But then Trump will spin that into, well, we have to deport 15 million people from the country. And so when I talk to these people, and they interrupt me way more than you, so thank you for letting me talk. But when I talk to a conservative radio host, they don't want me to talk because it's outside of the narrative that they're spoon feeding to their viewers and listeners.
Of course.
But do you want 15 million people deported from the country, and you want a Handmaid's Tale armored wagon going around the country with SWAT teams pulling people out of their houses? And what, I thought you were a libertarian, Mr. Conservative talk show radio host.
Anthony, that's what I was going to say. They would say that you sound like a Democrat or a liberal, but you don't. You actually just sound logical, and that you sound what Republicans used to sound like. Yeah. Do you understand what I'm saying?
What I'm saying is actually libertarian. Okay, that's the weird part about what I'm saying. I want you to live your life, and I want you, congratulations on your wedding, by the way. I want you to live your life, and I want you to have a great life, and it's not up for me to decide how you're going to live your life, okay? Mm-hmm. Moreover, as long as you're not harming my life or your fellow citizens, you should be free to do whatever it is that you would like to do with your life. And so for me, these guys, they wanted every which way to Sunday. So Justice Alito says, well, I can't control my wife. She's got upside down flags, pine cone, pine tree flags everywhere. But you want to control my wife, Justice Alito. Yeah. You just revoked Roe versus Wade. You just said that your wife has a mind of her own, and she has free choice, and she can do whatever she wants. But at the same time, you're saying that you want to control my wife. You want to revoke Roe versus Wade, and you want to take the choices that we put forth, which protect people, protect their freedoms. You want to take them away. But by the way, he's a dimwit, by the way, and I've met him firsthand. And he's the dimmest bulb in the Supreme Court, and and Scalia.
You think Alito is dumb?
Dimwit, yeah, he's a dimwit. He's got very low wattage. He's got very low intellect. He's a very superficial guy, and a result of which that's why he's gravitated to all of this sort of nonsense.
Do you believe the stuff about his wife? Do you think that she was somehow siding with the?
No, of course not. I don't agree with that. I mean, He did not like the outcome of the election.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Do you believe the flag thing, that it is actually a real thing that happened at their home?
Yeah, 100%, of course.
Okay.
Of course. No. I met the guy. I was with him and his wife at the Italian embassy. I don't know if you've ever been to the Italian embassy in Washington. It's a beautiful place. We had a state dinner in the early part of 2017 for the Prime Minister. Yeah. I went there to see. They were hosting an event as an Italian American. They invited me. I sat with Alito and his wife. Scalia thought he was a dimwit. He's a dimwit. And so it's fine that he's a dimwit. He's on the court
But
forever.
you think that he's a dimwit? Your words. You think he's a dimwit, and therefore he's being co-opted by the MAGA folks.
100%. Yeah,
And-
100%.
and-
Yeah,
and the
that's
more conservative.
there's no intellect. Whatever you thought of Scalia, Scalia had intellectual clarity. If you sat down to lunch with Scalia to talk about the Constitution, he had clarity and he had a point of view, and it was grounded in intellect, which is why Ruth Bader Ginsburg was sometimes at ideological odds with him on cases, but she understood him and she respected his point of view because it was grounded in the Federalist Papers. It was grounded in the history of the Constitution. It was also grounded in a recognition that the court made mistakes, right? The court made a mistake with the Dred Scott case. The court made a mistake with Plessy versus Ferguson. There was a very famous case where they said that blacks and whites could be treated separate but equal.
But equal,
If
yes.
you remember that.
Yes,
Okay,
I
that had to be reversed by the Warren Court with Brown versus Board of Education. And so Scalia was a jurisprudent guy. And you could say, okay, I disagree with him, but, I disagreed with him on Citizens United. I think that's wreaked havoc on our society. And I think that's actually a Plessy versus Ferguson for our democracy. We give rich people way more power than the average person. And we've accidentally created this separate but equal democracy with Citizens United, a decision that Scalia rendered in January 2010. But at least he had a theory. When you talk to Alito, he doesn't have that. He doesn't have that substance behind him. And yes, I think he got dragged into the MAGA nonsense. I think he got fed some of this stuff from
All right, I
Clarence
get your point.
Thomas's wife. And
I
here
get
we
your
are.
point. I'm going to start cutting you off like the MAGA people. I understand what you're saying. So, but I want to know with the Supreme Court, Anthony, if you have this with Alito and Alito's wife and Clarence Thomas's wife, they are private citizens, but you would think they'd have the wherewithal to know who their spouses are and what their spouses do for the country, and that they would have at least a little bit more reserve and common sense when it comes to expressing political opinions and joining political organizations and hanging flags upside down. So then what do we do with the court? Because if, imagine if one of the liberals in the court, if their spouses had behaved that way, imagine what would have happened. And even, it's not even just a spouse. Look at what Clarence Thomas has done. It's taking, graph and all kinds of stuff. What do you think would have happened?
Well, no, listen.
And
that's
why?
where-
Well,
well,
bigger
well,
question
listen,
is
well,
why
that-
why are we allowing this to happen?
Exactly. Well, that's where the hypocrisy is, of course, as you know. And the question now before us is that we've allowed people like Donald Trump to stress the system. Okay, so again, I can't speak for the founders of the United States, but they probably didn't think we were going to be interested in electing a convicted felon. Probably didn't think that was going to be on the board, so they didn't have a disallowal in the Constitution. Hey, if you're elected a convicted felon, you can't run for president. So you've got that situation. Same thing with the court. You had 5 justices. We expanded it to 9. Roosevelt unsuccessfully tried to pack the court back in the 1930s. He was rejected. Nowhere in the Constitution does it says to have 9 people. But if you're looking at the fragility of the democracy, and you're saying, wow, you could get 9 people on the Supreme Court, and they could make a decision to liquidate the powers of the court. They could say, okay, you know what? We actually want the executive branch to have more power, and so let's go 9-0, and we'll reverse Marbury versus Madison, and we'll liquidate what the court does here in the country. And so, there is an argument. My old constitutional law professor, Larry Tribe, has said we should add to the court to protect us from any one side getting that preponderance of a majority where they could hurt us, And here's the thing that you need to consider, and then I promise you I will shut up. If Trump withheld information about raw dogging a porn star while his wife was nursing their newborn son, and he withheld that information because he thought maybe, look, I'm raw dogging a porn star. It may not be great for me with the conservative community. Maybe they won't show up to vote. So I'm going to pay the porn star not to put out the raw dogging story. And he concealed the story, as a result of which he won the election. And then he got the opportunity to appoint 3 people to the Supreme Court. So I know we're in a rough and tumble world called American politics, But that's a big stretch to have that happen. You could see why people on the opposing side say, well, that's probably not fair. That probably shouldn't have happened the way it happened.
Yeah. I didn't need that mental image.
No, but you did, though. Can I tell you why?
No, raw dogging. Did you have to say raw dogging? Because I never.
I had to use the raw dogging because you have to explain it. So maybe there'll be a conservative that actually accidentally downloads your show, and they like, okay, yeah, the guy does raw dog porn stars, and he is a convicted felon. But for some reason, I'm voting for him. I got to ask my conservative wife, why are we voting for this guy again? Why are we accepting this? Why are we allowing this?
Okay, should we leave it to Anthony? I wouldn't even say that, and I say some crazy shit. So anyways, do you think that this conviction, though, you think it's going to change anything? It's going to have a major impact on the election?
I do. I think it's going to have a major impact on the election. I think that this is a really good country, and by and large, this is a country that has really good people in it. And I think people are going to look at the Biden people are going to run a replay of what happened during Trump, all the hysteria, and then they're going to remind people that he's a convicted felon and he's got 3 more cases that he's looking at. And I think they're going to remind him that we probably don't want to go back to that hysteria. And again, remember, this is going to be decided by independents. It's also going to be decided by suburban women in most of these swing states. And I'm going to say something to you again, probably, I don't know, you're probably going to cut a lot of this podcast because I'm probably saying stuff that's I'm going to get me in trouble. But
no,
I think that there are liberals that want pro-choice, but I think there are conservative women that also want there to be pro-choice. They may not say it at a cocktail party, but one out of
I've already said that. I've already made that case.
Oh,
they
you have?
won't
Okay,
say it
good.
in public.
Because one out of every 4 women have had an abortion.
Yeah.
So therefore, some of them have to be conservative. Yeah. And I think some of them are going to clutch their pearls and close the curtain and say, I can't vote for the abrogation of the choices related to my body in this election. So I'm just not going to do that. And so I'm going to vote with Biden. And I think when push comes to shove, Biden will win the election. And then the question for the Republican Party is that the end of Trumpism? Or are they going to put up an 82-year-old Donald Trump in 2028? Or is that the end of Trumpism? And will some type of new party resurface? And, the Whig Party died. The Whig Party died because they were fighting it out over slavery, Don.
All right. We don't want to get into the Whig Party and go into the weeds. But let me just tell you, I have said what you said. I think that I know that there are Republican women who won't tell their wives. They won't even say it publicly. But they actually believe in a woman's right, and not just because it is to get rid of an unwanted pregnancy. There are things that go along that happen with women where they need, if you have a pregnancy where, it may be an ectopic pregnancy or something that, it may compromise the life of the mother, or there are a number of things. And I have a book coming out, Anthony. I interviewed this woman, and she talked to me about an issue that she had with her pregnancy. The child was not going to live outside of the womb. She had to carry the baby. This was, a while ago, maybe 20, 30 years ago. She had to carry the baby, and they would not, give her the procedure that she needed in order to go about her life. So she had to carry around something that she knew was not going to live, and that eventually died in her body. Okay. And she was a conservative woman. And after that, she left the Republican Party because of that. Yeah, and so I do believe that there are conservative women who are going to vote on a woman's right.
So the one problem with orthodoxy is that when it meets contact with the real world, it rarely holds orthodoxy. And so you just gave a brilliant example. And so the real world requires us to have more flexibility with each other. And we need to be humble to the trials and tribulations of the real world.
So you're not the poll numbers don't scare you, are not concerning for you, because listen, in these snap polls that some of the networks did after Donald Trump's guilty verdicts, it shows Biden he may have gained 1% or just but within the margin of error. And he doesn't seem to be pulling ahead of Donald Trump at this point. That's not concerning. You still think Joe Biden is going to win?
No, it doesn't concern me. But let me just submit it back to you for a second, because you've been doing this a long time. You have 2 entities Trump and Biden, they are known to the American public for the last 50 years. So this is not a get out the vote exercise in the sense of a Barack Obama. It's not the Barack Obama introductory tour where the country's trying to get to know him in 2008. These are two known entities. So most people have already made the decision who they're going to vote for. Some people have decided they're not going to vote. Maybe you can pull them in. But all I'm saying to you is the Democrats are way better at getting out the votes. Okay, they just are. They have more registrants. They're more organized. And by the way, Biden is going to have way more money than Trump. And I don't frankly believe these quote unquote fundraising numbers. They raised $200 million. Come on, guys. I know you didn't raise $200 million that quickly. And you know you didn't.
You don't believe they raised that money after the verdicts where the site crashed?
Could they have raised $50 million? Sure. I don't believe that they raised 200. Let's see the money. What
Yeah,
they'll do is they'll push all the money into 1 month using some accounting gimmicks to make it look bigger than it actually is. But Biden has way more money than Donald Trump in his campaign right now.
But you don't think Trump has more energy behind him?
I'm sorry?
With MAGA? It seems like the MAGA folks are more energized. It doesn't seem like Democrats are energized. I don't know.
Democrats vote. They're not involved with a cult. They're not going to go around and tote signs and stuff like that. The Democrats vote. They're not sitting there. I got to be in Joe Biden's cult. I'm going to go out to the polls, close the curtain, and vote.
Yeah.
You know. And by the way, one last thing. Let me just say this to you because I was there. Okay, he lost the popular vote 3 times. Are you telling me, because you're smarter than me, he's gained popularity? We're sitting here in 2024, and there are more people going to vote for him now than voted for him in the past?
You're not buying it?
No, the data doesn't even suggest that. And moreover, go to the ABC polls on likely voters. Biden's 4.5 points ahead on likely voters. And so you're telling me that Biden's going to run campaign ads about a convicted felon running for the presidency who wants to deport 15 million people, wants to liquidate the legislative and judicial branches of the country, revoke NATO, destroy your way of life, send tariffs to the moon to the point where it costs your family another $2,500 a year to get the goods and services that you want. And he's a reckless guy where 40 of the people that work closely with him, including his former vice president, has said he's too dangerous and too irrational and too, frankly, un-American to be the president. And you're saying the country's still going to vote him in. Well, if that happens, then you get the democracy that you deserve, Don Lemon.
Okay. All right. Look, I'm just telling you, I think over the next 5 months, you ain't seen nothing yet. He's going to pull out all the stops. He's going to say the craziest shit that you can think of. He's going to come up with the biggest conspiracy theories. He's going to, talk about how old and feeble and cognitively declined that he believes Joe Biden is, none of which is, true or whatever. And by the way, they're not that far apart in age. When Joe Biden was a senior in high school, Donald Trump was a freshman. And as we know, it's not that far apart in age. But I got to ask you, though, since you're not believing these polls, I hope you're right. I do need a benefactor or a partner if you want to go around with me. I think we need to do a barbershop tour around the country to explain to these people exactly.
I'm happy to do that. And if you and I have to move out of the country, we can go look at real estate together. I don't think that that's going to come to pass. But I will say this: he is talking back now, taking back some of the comments he's making about Biden, because you and I both know that the comments he's making about Biden aren't true. Kevin McCarthy, who leaked all that stuff to the Wall Street Journal, has told people privately that Biden is way sharper than people think. And Trump is now saying, man, I better walk some of this back because on June 27th, if he cleans my clock like he did the last 2 times I debated him, what am I going to say? I lost to sleepy Joe Biden last time. Now I'm losing to feeble Joe Biden this time?
Do you think Trump will show up? I'm hearing a lot of people saying they don't think he's going to actually debate. He won't show up.
I would say 50-50 on that. Because
really?
I think he knows if he doesn't show up, they are going to annihilate him in the media. They're going to annihilate him in the advertising. They're going to say the convicted felon did not show up for the debate.
Let me tell you. This is unfair. It's like the targeted what Democrats did to me with all these phony court cases and how they railroaded me into being convicted in New York. And my people should be in the audience. And why would I walk into a debate with, what does he call it? The failing CNN. I forget what he calls it. He calls it a failing New York Times. I forget what he's called. A fake CNN.
Right.
And they're already against me. And it's the liberals on the stage. And they're going to be, it's going to be 3 against 1 on the stage. He's going to come up with something, I believe, if he doesn't show up. That's what I believe.
Well, okay, but Mr. Trump, you did say that debate any place, anytime, you set the rules. The rules were set. You and your team agreed to them. Now you're backing out of them. So how could any American take any
you can't win, folks. You can't win, folks. You can't win with them. It's rigged. It's rigged. Everything is rigged. But okay. But let me just say.
People are tired of that, though, too. I mean, people in this country are, by and large, fair. You know what else about this country? People are good sports when they lose. I got my ass fired. I didn't blame anybody but myself. I dusted myself off, went back to work. People are generally good sports in the country.
I don't know. I don't believe that about MAGA. Look at January 6th. Come on, Anthony. Look at what happened on January 6th. And they're saying that those guys.
Remember, MAGA is 14% of the electorate. I'm talking about the 60% of the people that live in the rational, comfortable middle are genuinely good sports. They know how to take a loss and they know how to shake somebody's hand when it's over. And we had the first president in 150 years not show up at the inauguration of his successor. We had a president that wouldn't accept defeat. We had a president that said he's not going to help the successor with the transition. I mean, this is as bad as un-American as you could be. Yeah, and there's 15% of the people. You can shoot people on Fifth Avenue. They'll donate to an ex-con or they'll donate to a felon.
Anthony, he got 70-some million votes.
Well, that's different.
A lot
story.
of people.
That's a different story. That's
a different story,
related
but
to
still.
left and right. He got my vote in 2016 for that reason. That's a different story. I got.
But 2020, he got more votes than. I mean, look, both of them.
Bigger,
it was record
bigger turnout. I mean, that's not fair. It was a bigger turnout. Trump got more votes, but Biden got 8 million more votes than him. But that's not a fair thing. But you're making, that's a different story. You're saying a lot of people out there. I was at an event in New Jersey last night. They're Republicans. They don't like Trump. A lot of them are saying, well, I only have 2 choices, Biden or Trump. I'm going to vote for Trump. And then when I get into the system issues, I get into the deportation issues, I get into the lack of predictability in the legal system, all the things that Mr. Trump wants, he's going to take you and me and persecute us. If you were working for CNN, he's going to pull their FCC license. He said all of this publicly, and he means it. And so if you want that to happen to the system, you're not looking at it through the right prism as a Republican. You're like, okay, am I a patriot like Liz Cheney, or am I a partisan? And again, there'll be people that vote for Donald Trump because they'll take it on partisan lines.
Yeah,
but there
won't
be enough of them.
I hear you, Anthony. I just think that you are being too kind-hearted. Honestly, I love you, but I think you're being a little naive. You look at Liz Cheney is no longer in office. Adam Kinzinger is no longer in office. You look at what happens to the people who stand up against him. The people who are in power, the people who are in charge of companies and even networks, they get rid of people who speak out against this madness. I mean, look, you talked about the money that Joe Biden is making. I don't know if that will hold for the foreseeable future, because in recent weeks, if you look at America's billionaires, they have reconsidered the prospect of another Trump presidency. Bill Ackman suggested that he plans to support the former President Trump. And this is what he said after where's the quote? He said after the last election, he says, quote, apologize to Americans for January 6th. Meantime, he's saying he's going to support Blackstone CEO Steve Schwarzman, who previously was anti-Trump, says he's going to support him now. That's a lot of money that's going to be going to the former president.
Won't be enough. I do.
Really?
I believe in the country, and I believe in the values of the country. And I'm going to show you something. Okay, you mind if I show you this? Okay, here.
Okay, depends on what it is.
This is a phenomenal book called The Awakening of the Spirit of America. It's well timed. Okay, Paul Sparrow is writing in the book what FDR did to put down the America First movement in the late 1930s, headed by Charles Lindbergh and Huey Long, and headed by people like Father Coughlin. And we're there again. We have American nativists who are primarily isolationists, that are primarily white-leaning and believing in white leadership over black and brown leadership. I'm just being
glad you
honest
said it. If I said it, I'd be a racist. But
okay, well, I'm going to say it, and people can call me whatever they want. I mean, I'm not a politician, and I'm not even a media person. So I'm just telling you that's where we are, and we have to beat that. And we will beat that because most Americans get it. Most Americans are rational, and most Americans are kind-hearted.
Are you surprised to see, though, those Wall Street types doing that? I mean, and
I am.
Because you are.
Yeah.
Because you remember Gary Cohn,
Yep.
right? Gary Cohn went to the White House. I think Gary Cohn is one of the ones who came out unscathed, right? And there were reasons he did it. I'm told there were reasons he did it, and there were financial reasons.
Okay.
Also, Dina Powell, who I've come to know a bit recently, she came out unscathed.
Yeah, I admire Dina. Yep.
Yeah. So I'm just wondering, are you surprised to see the Wall Street types? Or do you think they're, why?
Well, because he's a very dangerous guy. They know he's a very dangerous guy. And they're making the specious bet that he may win again, and they don't want to be on the wrong side of him.
But if they cut off his money supply,
all they had to do is go dark on him, right? But they're saying, they don't like the radical left. They don't like Elizabeth Warren regulating the financial services and regulating the banks. They don't like, I know the word woke does trigger people. So when you use the word woke, you trigger people. So let's say the radical left, or whatever you want to say. The people, there's a culture war going on, and those people on Wall Street are primarily center right, and they're moderates, and they don't want the hard left culture. And so they see Trump as a culture warrior that's pushing back that sort of stuff.
They don't want the regulations, and they want the tax cuts.
I think they do, yes. I think they do, and I think it's very short-sighted. Remember, like you, I'm a New York taxpayer, like you, and so half of my income is going to. I'm a minority partner in my own life. Okay, my income's going to Eric Adams, and it's going to Kathy Hochul and Joe Biden, and then whatever's left over, I get to take. So I'm a minority partner in my own life, living in New York, and I'm okay with it because I understand the distribution of wealth issue, and I'm okay with it. I'm just not okay with the lack of accountability of the politicians and the way they're spending it. It just happens to be wasteful. But those guys are like, no, I'm moving to Florida. I'm cutting my taxes. I want less taxes. And, listen, I don't want to be the guy that lives in a barbed-wired security compound in my McMansion while my fellow neighbors are suffering. I don't want that. And so I'll happily pay my taxes, and I'll happily be part of a system that hopefully will improve the system and improve the quality of life.
Wow, Anthony,
Trump doesn't represent that.
You sound a lot like me. It's scary. How did we all of a sudden have this meeting of the minds?
No,
I mean,
see, this is the
I've been saying the same thing. I don't like, look, no one loves paying all the taxes.
Because of the profiling, people are going to assume stuff about me, and they're going to assume stuff about you. That's the way it works, okay?
But let me finish my
By the way,
thought.
if I was bald and had very thick glasses, you would think I was a lot smarter. Okay, if you looked at my resume, sorry, this guy's like pretty well, but I look like a Long Island Guido.
I know, because how many hair transplants have you had? I mean, come on, listen.
No,
and you're wearing contacts.
This is an Italian cheetah. Now, this is dyed hair. This is Latin American dictator brown. Because I was using Cuban leader black, it looked like shit on television, so I had to.
Yeah, that was a bit much, Anthony.
Yeah, I had to dye it down, and also the
Did Deidre make you get professional stuff, or did you do it yourself?
You can see I'm balding in my eyebrows, so I probably have to do something there. So we'll talk about that after the show. Did
Deidre make you do different stuff, or
no? She doesn't
make you do
care.
professional?
She thinks I'm the vain. Okay. I'm probably vainer than you. I'm going
to
ask him. I'm going to ask him if he thinks you're vain or not.
No. Tim is the. You don't know that. We'll talk about that one later. But I just have to tell you that. You're going to be in trouble for saying that you're a minority partner in Deidre's life or whatever. In your marriage.
I said I'm a minority partner in my own life.
Okay.
I am earning $1.54 if it goes to the government. I get to keep 46 cents.
And how much does your wife get to keep?
Well, trust me, I had to shut off the American Express app notification. Okay, trust me. Okay, you know she likes to shop. Let's just put it that way.
Well, let me just say, I feel the same as you. No one likes paying all the taxes, but we live in a country that I believe that you have the opportunity to be able to create wealth, and you have certain freedoms that you wouldn't have in any other country. So I gladly pay taxes to help other people.
Me too.
Right. Okay. So then, how do you think the economy is doing? The reason I'm asking you that is because, tell me how you think the economy is doing, and then I'll ask you the next question.
It's a mixed bag. I think the economy is doing better than people expected. That we inducted more money into the economy as a result of COVID. If you put $5 trillion into the economy, it's 20% of our GDP. Mm-hmm. And so it's being forced into prices. So inflation went up a little bit. People are nervous about the inflation. Wages have also gone up. And the data is decent, but it is a mixed bag. If you look at the housing in the economy, remember, Don, housing runs, it's like the heartbeat of the economy. Because if you go down Main Street in Sag Harbor, most of those stores are tied to housing. You know, there's a deli, there's a hardware store, there's a sheetrocker and a plumber and an AV guy, and they're all there. And if the housing market's doing well, they all do well. And if it doesn't do well, they do poorly. You know that trade parade that you see on Long Island every day. Yeah. And so housing starts are down. Demand for housing is down. The mortgage rates are up, and that slowed down the new mortgages in terms of the new mortgage applications, and it's affecting the economy. And so the Fed will eventually cut rates as a result of what I'm saying. And I still maintain we're going to get 1 or 2 rate cuts by the end of the year. That's out of the consensus. So. But the economy is good enough for the incumbent to win re-election. The stock market's at an all-time high. The unemployment numbers are very low, and the labor participation, meaning the people that are in the job market, is high. And it's higher than it's been in the last 5 years. And so for those reasons, the economy is good enough for the incumbent to be reelected. Okay,
then here's my question then. Because as you said, you've given your assessment of the economy. Wall Street is hitting record highs, right? I know that it's not, it has a little bit to do with the health of the economy, but it's not, most people don't have stocks, all right? Unemployment is extremely low. Economists say the economy is on fire compared to other countries post-COVID, right? But Americans are unhappy. I mean, you are the Wall Street whisperer. So why aren't people feeling the Biden economy?
Because Joe Biden does not look like your grandfather, Don Lemon. He looks like your great-grandfather. Because Joe Biden broke his foot and didn't take the advice of the orthopedic, and he took the boot off 10 weeks early. And if you look at him now, he's hobbling because he can't put weight on his right foot.
And he's got arthritis in his spine.
And he's got arthritis in his hips. And he's 81 years old, and so he's hobbling around. But if Joe Biden was 51, or you're my age, he would be out every day using the bully pulpit of the presidency to explain the robust nature of the economy. He would remind middle and lower income people that he's reshoring manufacturing. He would remind them that the Infrastructure Act is rebuilding their bridges, roads, and tunnels. He would also tell them the CHIPS Act is helping them in terms of the reshoring of microprocessor foundries and even places like upstate New York. And he would say that my plan is actually working, and I'm normalizing things for you, and I'm maintaining our alliances around the world to make you safe and make you prosperous. And if you give me 4 more years, I can get this thing right. Okay? But he can't do it because he doesn't look like your grandfather. He looks like your great-grandfather. And he didn't listen with his foot, and he's hobbling around. He'd be better off on crutches. Okay? But he won't do that either.
Can he fix that now? Can he go back and fix that?
I don't know, sir, but I do know this, that was a mistake because he's okay, you know what he's doing? He's representing old. And whether you like Trump or not, he represents younger. You said
he presents younger. Biden presents older than he is, and Trump presents younger than Biden.
Yes, he does. Yes, he does.
Yeah.
That's correct.
Okay, so and we are, we're, I shouldn't say vain is a word. We're a superficial society. Because if you remember the debates, the Kennedy-Nixon debates, right? On the radio, if you listen, Nixon won. If you saw the television, Kennedy was this wildly handsome, young, vibrant person, and he won. So we look at the president and we say, okay, he looks old. He is old, but I think he's got good people around him and his policies are good. I'm just wondering why it's not resonating. I agree with you somewhat, but all of what you said doesn't translate to the price of, a carton of eggs. You know what I'm saying? Or the chicken that's on the or steak that the meat that's in the supermarket.
Because I want you to think about it this way, okay? And you're right about the debates. They are way more superficial, and we're way more superficial as a country. But what if Joe Biden had an army of surrogates out there? He has. Christie's raised his hand. Others like myself have raised our hands. They won't approach us because they're afraid that by approaching us, they're going to trigger people on their hard left, and it's going to fracture their coalition.
Okay. All right. Okay. Stop right there. 100%, Anthony. 100%. And I wonder, why are they so afraid? Considering, or why are they so cautious and conservative in a sense and so buttoned up? Because there's nothing that Joe Biden can do. There's nothing that this current administration can do. There's nothing that a surrogate can do that would come anything close to, as you say, raw dogging a porn star and then paying to cover it up. Absolutely nothing. Or having 34 criminal counts, being found guilty of falsifying business documents, or being found liable for sexually assaulting a woman. Mm-hmm. What is wrong with them? Why aren't they out there? Where's the razzle dazzle?
He's got woke, or however you want to call it. He's got hard left people in the administration. They don't want to give Christie or me or anybody that worked for Donald Trump a pass. They don't want him presenting moderate. They want him to win re-election with a more progressive mandate, and a result of which they're taking the risk of doing that. Okay, and it's going to make the election closer as a result of that. But I'm just arguing with you the following: if I had Joe Biden's economy, and I had a 60-year-old stamina and energy, I could go out on the hustings and explain that economy to people. If Joe Biden's not capable of doing that at age 81, why doesn't he have an army of surrogates do that for him? Why doesn't he tonight make an announcement? This is the Joe Biden College of Cardinals. This is the Joe Biden Army of Advocates. And these are the people I'm going to empower to go explain the economy, explain the relationship that we have with NATO, explain, and people don't say this ever on television, but I'll say it to you. So Sweden and Finland, do you think there are smart people in Sweden and Finland? I think there are. For 80 years, they didn't join NATO. All of a sudden now they want to join NATO. Why do the Swedish and the Finnish want to join NATO if they're not joining it for 80 years? They see a threat. And a result of which we have to take that threat seriously if we believe in Western liberalism and we believe in freedom. We understand what Franklin Roosevelt said, that we can't be isolationists. We have to be in it together. There are 5.7 million people that are living under autocracy around the world. Those of us that are in freedom live in the minority. We have to protect each other. And why don't we have an army of advocates out there explaining that these things that our grandfathers and great-grandfathers developed after the post-World War II era, the creation of that infrastructure, is worth preserving. Okay, but we're not doing that. Okay, and we're letting Mr. Trump rant and rave.
You're letting a felon beat you.
Yeah, about America first, and he's saying that we should pull out of NATO, and he told Bolton he's going to pull out of NATO. He told Milley he wants out of NATO. What do you want out of NATO? It's the most prosperous, most successful, peaceful alliance in the world. Okay, does it need to be renewed? Can we do things to make it better? Certainly. Yeah. But you're telling Vladimir Putin from a microphone like this, hey, those guys didn't pay enough. Could you bring them in? By the way, I tried to explain to Trump why those guys weren't paying enough, and he shut me down. Right. You know why they weren't paying enough? We let them slide. Do you know why we let them slide? We wanted to make sure that we had the most powerful military by a quantum. Okay, and so we looked around the world. We said, you know what? They're not meeting their 2% threshold. Let's let them slide because we want to be more powerful than everybody else. You ever read the Leviathan? In Thomas Hobbes' book, he said the great power who's peaceful and benevolent will put down the internecine conflicts. Our grandparents understood that. And you want them to pay their fair share now? No problem. But you signaled to them for 15 years that you were okay with them not paying their fair share.
Okay, so we've gotten foreign policy. We've talked about the economy. Let's talk about immigration, all right?
Yeah.
Because this president has been facing really mounting political pressure over this migrant influx at the southern border. On Tuesday, the president signed an executive order that will temporarily shut down asylum requests once the average number of daily encounters tops 2,500 between official ports of entry. Do you think that? I don't know. Do you think that he was admitting that Trump and the right, that they were right about the border?
It's more nuanced than that, but I think he made a mistake. If we're calling balls and strikes,
you think it was a mistake to do it?
No. I think the mistake was he did a very smart thing with the Chinese on the tariffs. Trump pushed the tariffs. It was controversial. When he got into office, he left the tariffs in place. In fact, if anything, he's added more tariffs. He could have just left the executive orders in place that Trump put into place, and that border would have been a lot tighter. It would have been less porous over the last 3 years. Mm-hmm. But he didn't do that because he was reversing Trump's decisions. And sometimes what the Democrats do, does Trump like it? Yes, Trump likes it. Okay, we hate it.
Bad. Trump bad. Yeah,
right.
We
Trump
hate
bad.
it.
So therefore, we're going to do the polar opposite of Trump. And so that's where the mistake was. Okay, and then he said, okay, I have made a mistake. Let's solve this with the Congress. And so he said, what does the hard right want? They want the following. Let's give it to them. And then Trump called the hard right and said, you can't sign that.
Don't do it.
Because I've got to make this an issue this year. And then boom, right there, when that happened, he should have said, okay, I tried to fix this with the Congress. I got it wrong at the beginning part of my term. But here are new executive orders that are going to be as onerous as the ones that Trump had in place, and then things would have settled down. But he didn't do that. He waited 6 months. Mm-hmm. Okay, and so I don't know the inner workings of the administration, but the border is a concern for people, and that's a weird thing. If I turn to somebody in this town, Manhasset, lots of white people in this town, are you worried about the border? Yes, I hate the porous border, and they use Trump words like they're pouring over the border. Okay. Is the border affecting you today, day to day? No. Okay. Have you been robbed by a illegal immigrant? No. Okay. But you're worried about the border. Yes, I am. And by the way, I'm not making light of things that have happened, murders and robberies, and I'm not making light of it. But here's what I'm going to say, and this is really controversial. Man, I'm probably going to get canceled after this podcast. But the real controversial thing is the 15 million people that Trump wants to deport are helping the economy. They're in the economy working. They actually are paying taxes. They are paying sales taxes and property taxes, and some of them are full-blown paying income taxes, and they've got W-9s out there, and they are working, and they're helping us grow the economy. You pull them out of the economy, you'll tip the economy in a recession. And that's a great irony, but there's a great Washington Post article this week about this. And so this is fear-based. This is your country is changing. Now, in fairness to the people that come into the country fairly, there is an unfairness of what's happening at the border, and I understand that. And I'm going to say one last thing, and this is my Democratic and Republican friends. You want to solve the border problem, you got to drop more aid into the countries where the people are trying to seek asylum from.
Right.
You know, you had Franklin Roosevelt had a good neighbor policy. We're in a depression, and he had a good neighbor policy. What did he do? He set up USAID, and he dropped money into Guatemala, and he dropped money into Honduras, and he dropped money into Ecuador, and they did it in a way around the dictators, so that jobs and opportunity and aspiration were created in country. So you didn't have moms with their babies running 900 miles to the American border. Okay, but we cut all that aid. And I'm telling you, you could have a $20 billion problem at the border, or we could spend a couple of $1 billion in preventative medicine in Latin America to stop the influx of the refugees. Okay,
That's 'cause you're smart.
But why not go with right or wrong as opposed to hard left rhetoric or hard right rhetoric?
Well, look, James Lankford on the Republican side, who is a conservative Republican, right? A very traditional Republican. They came up with a compromise deal with the Democrats, and Donald Trump said, "Don't do it." And so, now Joe Biden is having to do this. Just real quickly, do you think it is a bad idea, or you think it's good what he's doing for immigration now?
I think it's a good idea.
Okay, good.
I think the Americans live there, and he's got to appeal to these moderate independents.
All right. Do you think he would have gotten more criticism because it seems like the cable folks are awfully quiet on criticizing him on this?
Yeah, where are they going to go with this? I mean,
Yeah.
they can try to criticize him, but they can't really. I mean, you can't have it both ways. Your boy Trump didn't want to fix the border. The border's a problem. The president's acknowledging there's a problem. He's using executive action to fix the border. Well, he should have did it 3 years ago. Okay, point well taken, but he's fixing it now.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk about your book. Because, Anthony, in your book, you talk about ego. You said there is a good ego. And usually when people associate, you said the importance of ego, of a good ego, right? When you think of people think of, well, ego, that's what got Donald Trump in trouble. Ego always gets people in trouble, right?
Yeah.
It leads to hubris. So what is a good ego, and why is a good ego actually healthy, sir?
Yeah, so my ego has also gotten me into trouble. I made a decision to go work for Donald Trump due to ego.
Yes.
Okay.
That's why I'm asking you.
I grew up in a blue collar neighborhood. I built 2 businesses, went to 2 fancy schools. I can now work for the American president. But my wife, Deirdre, who hates Donald Trump almost as much as Melania hates him, which is like the standard of hatred at the top. She hates him almost as much as Melania. She told me, don't go do it. And I said, okay, no, I have to do it because of my ego. And so my ego got me into trouble, and my pride got me into trouble, and I paid the price for it. But in my book, I write, don't make ego-based decisions. But I do believe that you need, in order for survival on planet Earth, a healthy ego. And what is a healthy ego? It's enough self-esteem and confidence to go forward, to be willing to take risks. If something happens in your life that's a failure or a setback, you don't let it define you. You could leave CNN or be fired from the White House, and you could still have a great life.
Right.
And my point is that you got to learn how to bounce in life. I don't mean you, Don Lemon. I mean you in the second person. And I have to write this stuff for my children. I have 5 children, and I have seen these. We're talking about billionaires.
Italian.
I'm talking about these billionaires that are all left and to the right. Everything about their life is perfect. You know how many billionaire memoirs I've read where I'm going, ho hum, the guy got that decision right every time, and he did everything perfectly, and their kids are all messed up because they've got this big shadow over them. I'd rather tell my kids an honest story about life, the good, bad, and the ugly. I have a high profile, so when I fail, it's going to be more aggressive in terms of the presentation of the failure. But I want my kids to learn from it. I want my kids, if they have a setback or a failure, they can say, okay, that's okay, as long as it's not a health issue, Don, right? We can't, God forbid, if it's a health issue. But if you're having a bad day, imagine my day getting fired from the White House on the 31st of July, blown into Pennsylvania Avenue, skinned alive by the media, parodied on Saturday Night Live, rolled in margarita salt after they skinned me, and get up from that and go forward. Yeah. And I think that's the lesson, right? So I have 25 lessons in the book. It's a fast read. You don't have to read it sequentially. You'll find yourself in that book. And again, I don't mean Don Lemon, but I'm talking about the generic person. You'll see a vulnerable person that's writing about human frailty honestly. Yeah. And I'm telling the listener or the reader, don't judge human frailty so harshly. And by the way, in yourself, don't judge it so harshly. Move forward, be kind, live with integrity, and that's it.
That's how I live my life. You know that.
Yeah, that's it. That's why we like each other.
I know, but I appreciate it.
That's why we hang out with each other.
There's one thing, I love the book, but there's one thing that I wasn't happy about with the book. Can I be honest with you?
You go ahead.
So do you remember we were at a White House Correspondents' Dinner event or party? We were there.
Yep.
And you saw someone who you were not happy with, and I had to stand in the middle of you two so that you two would not come to blows. Do you remember that? You did not write about that in the book.
I didn't write about that in the book, but you want me to talk about that? I'm happy to talk about it. No, because you got to say something. The person you're referring to, whose name I never use, you can use it in a voice overlay if you want. But I knew the guy's family for 45 years. His father worked with my dad on Long Island construction. Okay, so my dad knew his dad from 1965. He was an Italian kid from Long Island. He's not even allowed in certain restaurants out here now. They won't even let him. He broke the bro code so ridiculously by what he did to me.
Yeah.
He was trying to come over to me. I wasn't looking to fight with him. I was like, dude, I told you that you and I will never talk again.
Yeah.
I don't want to have a relationship with you. I never think about the guy. You're bringing him up today.
I was just joking because that's what
7 years ago.
I wanted you to write about it, but I wasn't the only one. There were other people there, but I understand, and I have someone in my life who broke the bro code, and that's the worst thing that you can.
No,
do.
you're
That's one of
breaking the
worst
bro code like that. What do you? I mean, literally, it'd be like me doing something to betray you.
Yeah.
And to score a few points with the New Yorker magazine. I mean, the guy's a jerk off.
Anthony Scaramucci. It's called From Wall Street to the White House and Back. I'm telling you, this is a good guy. The book is exceptional. He's okay. He's not exceptional, but he's a good guy. But I'm so happy that you're finding found success on the other side of that. You spent a lot of time
with me. You've been very generous to me, Don Lemon.
I know, but it's not. You don't. You're a man of very few words. So
I am. Yes, I am. I have a tendency to be very introverted and very shy, and I don't like to tell people how I think, but you've brought it out of me today on the
Anthony,
Don Lemon Show.
I hope to see you soon in person, okay?
All right, God
you and
bless
your wife,
man.
okay? Thank you for coming on. Thanks for watching the Don Lemon Show. Make sure you click on the image in the top right to subscribe to my channel and the thumbnail in the bottom right to watch more content from my show. And I'll see you next time.